Welcome to God with George Ortega. This is episode number 54. I'm recording it on Wednesday, January 6th, 2020 at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time. And I don't really feel all that much like doing this episode today because I'm kind of like a bit consumed with what's going on. Trump supporters, Trump is continuing to lie to people about the election being stolen, and he's inciting riots. He's actually inciting sedition. So now, how to connect this with our exploration of God? Well, you know, in a philosophical, theological sense, it's important to acknowledge, hold on, it's important to acknowledge that that this is all God's will, and this is like we like to understand God as being responsible for all that is good, and certainly God is, but we also have to acknowledge that God is responsible for all that is not good. And here, it's in cases like this where, the value of what, is in many ways an unfortunate reality that God does these things. This is the circumstance where the importance of understanding that, though, is really highlighted. And let me try to go through this. Like right now, to the extent that we don't acknowledge that God is sovereign, that God is all powerful, that God's will determines everything that happens, then we ascribe free will to ourselves. And the problem with that is what's happening today. There's a lot of anger out there, a lot of blaming, hostility. And when we don't properly, accurately acknowledge God as sovereign, as omnipotent, um, again, we ascribe these actions to ourselves and each other. And that is a powerful engine for these kinds of conflicts. I mean, imagine our world, our politics, everybody understanding that God's will is the only will. Yes, we would be dissatisfied with certain things that are happening, certain injustices. There's aspects of life that we'd rather not be as they are, and certainly we would be dissatisfied with those things. But by properly understanding who God is, we would be shifting our anger and our aggression away from ourselves and each other to God, being very angry perhaps with God if we believe that that's wise or helpful. But here's the thing. I mean, like this 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 solar system is like, the teeniest speck of reality in the universe, and God is the entire universe. So what I'm trying to say is, like, yes, we can get angry with God and just like express that anger, feel that anger, direct that anger, but we're not going to hurt God, with that anger. That's the value. When we ascribe a free will to ourselves and each other, we hurt each other, because we are, we can and do hurt each other in that way. When we ascribe it to God, no, we can do that safely. We hurt ourselves perhaps sometimes when we get angry with God, but it preserves our our peace among ourselves, And now, naturally, the the question becomes, well, all right, God being in control could cause us, compel us to achieve this understanding, to understand that God is supreme, sovereign, and by that understanding, understand that we don't have a free will, that everything is up to God, and again, lead to this what I believe would be a much more benign world, more understanding, more intelligent. So God hasn't done that, and you know, at that point, we can only speculate. It's not like we can know the mind of God to that degree to understand why God does what God does. But again, I think it would be a step in the right direction. Okay, I don't particularly want to spend the rest of this episode, about 22 minutes left, going through what's going on today. To a certain extent, I see it as theatrics also. It's very dangerous, serious theatrics, but I don't think that anyone is going to. I don't think it's going to change anything. I think what will change is like we're going to have to like clamp down on fake news, to make it illegal for somebody like Trump to claim that the election was fraudulent when it wasn't, and I'm sure he knows it wasn't. So we have our work cut out for us, but that is like the work of politics, and I want to like keep this for my benefit, for my peace of mind, at least, about God. So now, all right, let's get back to this idea that yes, things like this happen. Far worse things have happened. Remember the Civil War, the two world wars. We've got famines. We've got just we've got illnesses. We've got this COVID. There's a lot of things that happen in this world that we would prefer not to happen. Very reasonably. And well, here's the thing: what can evoke optimism, and put everything in perspective, is that despite the inequities, the unfairnesses, the assaults on humanity, on other animals, or factory farms and all, despite all the evil and suffering that is occurring today, we have to keep in mind and remember and relish the understanding that our world today is so many times better than it has been throughout the entirety of human history. Go back 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. We are so much less violent, so much healthier. We're living longer. We, we you know, we, we're just like, we certainly continue to have a problem with poverty. About almost 1 billion people are living in extreme poverty, but 200 years ago, almost everyone was living in extreme poverty. So there is progress. What I'm trying to say is like, yes, our world has problems, and serious problems. Climate change being the most serious among them, and we're going to have to take very serious measures to address them. But as we're doing that, and as we're living through times like this, it is very important to remember that God has decreed, has fated our world to continue to get better and better. And this isn't just a sociological kind of an understanding. God designed us to get better and better as a humanity. The reason I say that is because, like, we're designed by God, and this isn't controversial. This is like basic science. We're designed as organisms to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's what we do. That's our most fundamental motivation, and it reflects pretty much everything we do. Um, so, um, so then it stands to reason, and we're also actually designed biologically, sociologically, I guess in this case also, to become more and more intelligent as individuals, as a humanity, and that's happening. Uh, you wouldn't see it on TV sometimes, but and so like the point behind that is that we will continue to create the conditions on this planet that lead to greater and greater pleasure and happiness and less suffering and unhappiness. Again, because that's how we were designed. God designed us in that way. And and so that's very important to keep in mind. Okay, so let's see. Um, yeah, I was reading some Psalms. There are 150 Psalms. I think I'm up to 120 most recently. I've read them before, but something that strikes me, and this is something, well, it's more about religion than about God. Just let me go into it briefly. Just the idea is like the Bible, Psalms, the Old Testament, the New Testament has so much wisdom, good wisdom, and goodness to it, but it also has a lot of violence. You know, anybody who's deeply religious will read about God telling, you know, the Israelites to destroy a city or God destroying a city. There's a lot of atrocities in the Bible, and not just the Bible, religious works, at least Judeo-Christian. And this is, again, I shouldn't get too far into this because it's not directly about God, and I want to try to keep it as directly about God as possible. But the idea is like we're going to eventually have to leave that kind of expression behind in the past. Stop telling these stories of carnage, of wars and atrocities and horrors that people have committed. The reason I say that is because the past instructs the present. It in a great sense condones the present. When people read the Bible, very religious people, this led to the Crusades. People like, felt that it was their God-given mandate to kill anyone who wasn't Christian. I mean, that's how insane it became. And so, like, again, going forward, we're going to have to redesign our religions so our children are no longer reading about, God destroying cities and armies just, decimating each other. Um, that's, we've got some other, we've got like climate change and other problems that probably are more urgent than that. But, over the next 50, 100 years, 200 years, certainly, I imagine we'll have reached that understanding that we can't, speech, expression, history that perpetuates violence by its repetition, by repeating the stories and thereby in the minds of men condoning those stories in various ways. We can't afford that. All right, enough with the editorializing. Um, so, um, all right, so like, I'm glad I'm doing this show, and I'm distracted today. I don't want to get into the politics on this show. I'll, get into the politics in other ways, but so the show is helping me to get more closely connected to God, um, and that's you know that's and hopefully it's helping you to connect more closely to God. And sometimes, we lose sight of the value of that. But I think in my life, and I think in the lives of most people who are religious, who believe in God, to the extent that we stay connected as possible to God, that we have God in our consciousness, on our mind, as much of the time as possible, that makes us into better people. That reminds us of what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. It reminds us of our you know, identity as manifesting God's will, as being a part of God, in every sense of the word. Um, so, so that's the challenge. And again, so like what's happening today is that however wise and useful it is to maintain that connection, the challenge is things like what happened today, and then so many other things that happen in our personal lives, just like basically life is continually conspiring to come between us and God, come between us and this understanding of God. And think about it, like Abraham, who introduced God to our world, and the Israelites, that became a major part of the message that it's not just that God exists, um, and it's not just that we benefit from understanding that fact. It's that as human beings, we have tasks related to our survival as biological beings. We have to work, we have to tend fields and harvest and create things and do things that are mundane. But the value of Judaism, of monotheism, of theism, is to allow us to then, take the next step to evolve from these, brute beings that, who are, we're insignificant in a lot of ways, to a higher consciousness. Um, and again, but it's all in the service of our happiness. God blesses us for God to bless us is for God to help us, to compel us to be happier, to make us happier. And to the extent that we evolve theologically, spiritually, to have a stronger and stronger connection to God and a more and more accurate understanding of who God is, that is that's our destiny. You know, we will. That's what religion is for. To allow us to evolve beyond kind of like this reductionist scientific understanding that we're just things, we're just quarks and particles and atoms. Um, so excuse me. So yeah, it's for the world, it's again, I see it happening over the next 100 years. I think I think right now this a part of this series is about proving logically, scientifically, that God is not just a faith or a hope or a belief, that God is as much much more of a reality than you are, than anything around you. Look around. Um, and with that understanding, we can create a much better world. But again, that may be 100 years out. I mean, maybe it's 50 years out. I mean, like when, you know, if a truth like this gets properly understood and disseminated in today's world with the internet, it may be 5 or 10 years. Strange things are happening in politics today. Strange things can happen in religion. Um, so yeah, that, and I may be bringing a friend of mine who happens to be a rabbi on the series. He would help me to explain, this important truth. Maybe this is one of the most important truths of this series. And we devoted the episode number 3 through 7, 5 episodes, to explaining why God, is a necessity, a logical scientific necessity. So maybe this is, the highest purpose or utility of this series. And so we're going to see where that goes. But no, this is more than that. I mean, like, 'cause even if a person just has the faith that God exists, doesn't have the absolute certainty of God's existence, that there's more to it. There's the idea that we basically need also to express that understanding, to manifest it in our thoughts, in our feelings, in our actions. So, okay. So I've got about 6 minutes left. Again, I didn't really feel like doing this tonight because, having learned about what's going on in DC today, it's just like, it distracts us from higher spiritual pursuits. But let's basically, well, this is how so God works sometimes. For example, and this is important to go through. For example, let's say you have an alcoholic, and they are just like getting sicker and sicker. Their liver is just getting destroyed slowly but surely, and but they're not really acknowledging the seriousness of their dilemma, their illness. And then God will cause them to have what's generally referred to as, what do they call that? Hitting rock bottom, as an alcoholic. I don't know, person loses their job, loses their family, loses their home. And, you think that, well, this is a very unfortunate thing. That's our first, but then, the bigger picture is that, well, because of that, the person finally understands that they have a serious, serious problem, and they work on it, and they get better, and they no longer are an alcoholic. And so this tragedy of their hitting rock bottom, turns out to be a blessing in disguise. So let's get back to these politics. So, like, what Trump has exposed is we have some serious, serious flaws in our democracy. We believe that our institutions are secure by law and all. Apparently we're finding they're not. Apparently we're finding that people like Trump, and he's not the only one, can subvert our democracy, can subvert our way of life, and can just trample on what we value. And yes, and like, this has been happening for decades. We've known about climate change since the 80s, and we haven't done nearly, we haven't really done anything, I mean, practically. And so this is, we're like the alcoholic, that climate change is going to destroy us unless we wake up, unless we hit rock bottom. And so this is maybe our rock bottom as a world, that we can't fight climate change. We can't protect our world, our civilization, while people like Trump are legally allowed, which apparently they are, or they're not being prosecuted, to subvert our common good for selfish means. So I think that's how, and it's, so again, like, within that context, I guess that that may be cause for optimism. That, rather than like worrying, oh my God, they're assaulting the our Constitution. You know, they're they've invaded the Capitol building. You can get into like the media spin about it. And I'd love to see the media, move from that till, all right, here's what needs to be done about it. Because they don't, they're too caught up in the circus of it because, because that's the easy thing, and that scares people, and people watch the media and read the media more. So, I mean, it's not just Trump. The media is part of the problem. We're part of the problem for electing, officials who don't value and protect our democracy as much as they need to. So, but again, there's cause to be optimistic about what's happened. That it might actually just like so marginalize Trump and his supporters that yesterday, before today, much less perhaps is possible to be done to protect our country and our world than will be after the 20th, January 20th, when Biden's our next president. All right. Back to God. God is orchestrating all this. I don't understand why God creates this drama for us. But again, understanding that God does is better than believing that we do, because when we believe that we're fundamentally responsible for this, we blame ourselves and each other, and we aggress against each other. All right, well, that's all I have time for tonight. Yeah, watch me, I guess, every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media Channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon. Again, channel at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Okay, and again, the episodes are all available through the White Plains Community Media website, and they're also available on YouTube and another, I'm going to try to get this into a podcast eventually, once things, after the election, the holiday season, it's hard to get stuff done. So hopefully I'll do that. And hopefully, starting with tomorrow's episode, hopefully, and certainly, over the coming weeks, I just want to, there's so much to explore about God, and so much to go over and over, because it's not just knowing this, it's understanding and integrating it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on God.